This is the 7th of 8 videos that Corecon is providing to show how to create a single project custom log report using Syncfusion Bold. In the previous 6 videos, we've been following a series of help articles to show how this is done. We've completed steps 1 through 4. We added the grouping and totals, and we added our first visible report parameter filter, which was the ability to filter the report based on the PO type. In this training video and in the help article that corresponds with it, we're going to add a second visible report parameter filter so that we can also select from multiple prime contracts. For this, we've already selected a project that has multiple prime contracts. We're in the procurement module. We're going to go to POs and over to reports and then select custom. The report that we were just working on in the previous video, and we'll click edit report. Next thing we want to do is save the report as, so we don't lose any of our work. Call this parameter number 2 and click save. So we've already created and applied a parameter to select from a list of PO types that are set up in Corecon's global settings. In this version, we're going to add a second parameter filter, and we're going to be able to select from a list of prime contracts under that project. The first step is to add a data set for the new parameter filter. To do this, we're going to go to the database icon on the right. You can already see our main data set and the data set we set up for the first parameter. We're going to click the New Data button and then select the existing database. And when you select this should be your 5-digit Corecon org ID or company ID number. Then we'll click Connect Data Source. And we're going to add 2 views to the palette. So let's go to the data sources, the views. The first one we're going to add is the Prime Contract Info Simple. We're just going to drag and drop that view into the palette. And the second view we're going to add is the PO info. We're just going to drag and drop that into the palette. When we do, we need to make the connection between these 2 views using the query joiner. So the table on the left is going to be the Prime Contract Info Simple table. The one on the right, the PO info. We're going to use an inner join, and we're going to use the Prime Contract ID equals, on the right side, the Prime Contract ID from this table as well. That is the common field that will tie these or join these 2 views together. Then we're going to click OK. Now we're going to name this data set and call it DS Prime Contract ID with no spaces. Next, we'll toggle to see the SQL code behind this. Next, we'll scroll above the default SQL code based on the views and join logic. And we're going to add a few lines to give ourselves some room to work. The code can be found in the help article that corresponds to this training video. Notice that the first line of code includes the open and close brackets, not the parentheses. We're selecting a record number -1 and assigning it the option or description all. The record -1 does not exist in the Prime Contract Info Simple view, which is why we use this record ID. Next, we need to add the phrase union And then we're going to select distinct. We can use some of this existing code. So we're going to select distinct dvo.view prime contract info simple dot prime contract ID. And we can get rid of this line. The next line we can incorporate is near the bottom. So I'm going to delete all this extra code. And we need to come over to the from statement. And then we're going to add a where statement, which is very similar to this. So we're going to copy that down and just make some edits. So we can get rid of the open and close brackets. And we can also get rid of these. And this needs to be project ID. At project ID. Order by prime contract num subject. We're going to select a field that doesn't exist, and we're going to call it all. Then we're telling Syncfusion that we need to select a distinct prime contract from the prime contract info simple view, which is joined to the PO info table or view, and that will come from the prime contract info simple dot project ID field, where that ID field matches the project selected at the beginning when you open the report. And then we're just telling it to sort that by order based on the prime contract number subject. Then click Finish. Now we can see a new data set called DS Prime Contract ID. Next, we're going to add a visible report parameter. And we're going to click the report parameter icon on the right tool, then click New Parameter. We're going to rename this Prime Contract ID and prompt of prime contract number. We're going to set the data type to an integer. Make sure that the visibility shows as visible, and then click on Assign Values. We're going to first work with the Available Value tab and set the value to Query Value. We're going to switch this to DS Prime Contract ID, and we're going to include the value field Prime Contract ID and the label field Prime Contract Number Subject. Before we click OK, we'll switch over to the Default Value tab, and we're going to specify and then click Add. We want the field to say -1 and click OK. Then we're going to save that new parameter, and you can see we now have a new parameter called Prime Contract ID. Now we need to modify the main dataset SQL's where clause. So we're going to go back to the data icon. we're going to go to the DS, the data source POs, over to these three little dots and click Edit. We're going to scroll to the bottom of the SQL statement to view this where clause. We need to add the additional report parameter filter. So under the existing AND statement, we'll enter AND This SQL statement can be found in the help article that corresponds with this training video. Then click Finish. Now we save the report, and then let's go back and review what we've done. So we've added a second filter, the first being the PO type we added in the previous video, and we've also added one for prime contract number, and we've included the default all, so we can select either one of the individual prime contracts or select all of them. Let's filter this by prime contract number 1, click View. And we can also reset the PO type to include only the material POs and click View Report. So now we're filtering first by prime contract and then by PO type. This is the 7th of an 8 video series on how to create a new log style report from scratch for a single project.